Should be live now.
You ready?
Okay.
Okay, I will call the Peace River Town Council regular meeting of Monday, February 12th to order at 5:01. And I'd ask that if possible, if the councilors that are on Zoom, if you wouldn't mind turning it on your video, if you could. However, we have an agenda in front of us. Are there any additions or deletions?
I do, Your Worship, thank you. I have one addition. Under closed session, please, disclosure is harmful to intergovernmental relations, section 21, and it's a regional meeting update. And for deletions, I would like at this time to delete closed session number 2.
Thank you. Would someone be prepared to put forth a motion to accept the agenda as amended? Councillor Ford moves that council adopt the agenda of the February 12th, 2024 regular council meeting as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so
In favor.
Mr. Boychuk, are you able to turn on your video or not?
Unfortunately, no, because I'm just using my phone.
Okay. Okay, then everyone was in favor. Thank you. We have the minutes of the January 22nd regular council meeting in front of us. Did anyone notice any edits on those? If not, would someone like to put forth a motion on the matter?
I can move that.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor moves the council adopt the minutes of January 22nd, 24 regular council meeting as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
In favor.
It's carried. Okay, item 4, we have a public hearing on bylaw 2145, land use bylaw number 1891 amendment, the redistricting of lot 1, block 10, plan 882037. And we have Ms. Modi to come forward. And I'll get going on that. Okay, so we need to open the hearing and we need somebody to move that council open a public hearing on the matter of bylaw 2145 land use bylaw number 1891 amendment, the redistricting of lot 1, block 10, plan 882047. And would someone please move that? Councillor Carso moves. And all those in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
In favor.
Great, it is carried. So I hereby declare the statutory public meeting open at 5:04 and note that this hearing is held pursuant to section 7(8), 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act. I request the manager of planning and development to confirm. So Ms. Modi, what the purpose of the public hearing is?
Your worship, the purpose of the public hearing is for a bylaw that rezones the subject property from the community development district to the residential 2 district.
Thank you. And the next, when the public hearing notice was advertised in the local paper?
The notice was advertised pursuant to our advertising bylaw number 2034. It was published on the town's website on January 19th. It was posted on the town's Facebook page on the January 23rd, 30th, and February 6th of 2024. Posted on our public bulletin board on the town office on the 19th of January as well, and mailed directly to the property owner and adjacent property owners on January 19th.
Thank you. And are there any written submissions received and not included in the public hearing agenda package?
There are none.
There are none. Okay. So I'll request that all persons giving oral presentations are to clearly state their name and that presentations are to be brief and to the point. I now call on Development Officer Modi to start us.
Thank you. So yes, I'm here to present today the proposed bylaw number 2145, which would rezone 9702 Ave from our community development district to the residential 2-family district. The property is currently developed. And the purpose here is to enable a private residential use on the site. So the community development district is for public uses, and the property owner does not wish to make use of the building for that purpose anymore and would like to transition this to a private lot and a private dwelling. So that is their intention. In terms of the site, as I said, the property is developed with a residence, but it was a public residence on the site. The subject parcel does meet the requirements of the R2 district, so we don't have any particular concerns with that. The building was originally developed in the 1970s. In 2004, the current approved use of the site was changed to a group care facility, which is a defined use within our bylaw. And the building was most recently renovated in 2015. They are moving towards the R2 district, the purpose of which is to provide for the development of single and double and certain multi-unit residential dwellings. As I said, the existing building is a residential building. The house currently includes 7 bedrooms and bathrooms, some of which are full, some are half, and 2 kitchen areas. And was originally approved as a group care facility. Based on the measurements of our site map, the one setback that would not be met for current bylaw is our front yard setback. The house is set forward from that a little bit compared to what is required in our bylaw, but side and rear yard setbacks are met. And you can see both the rear and the front of the property in figures 2 and 3 of the public hearing report. In terms of the adjacent lands, the subject parcel is immediately surrounded by institutional lands, being Glenmurray School and a local church to the east and west and north of the subject site. To the south of the subject site is our M1 district, M1B district, which is one of our light industrial districts. And we do have an industrial building immediately across from the property, and to the sides, kitty corner to the property, are some industrial yard space that is currently used for outside storage. In terms of our municipal development plan, the MVP does, as is consistent with the way it's been used, specify that this land is intended to be institutional. So if we were to move forward, we would want to update the municipal development plan to be consistent with the residential use going forward. Other than that, the MVP doesn't have a lot of direction with respect to the development of institutional lands, aside from their location on that future land use map. We do contemplate somewhat the reuse of surplus institutional sites within the brownfield development, and do contemplate that some of our brownfield sites could be reused for residential, but that is specific to other areas of town. Otherwise, the MVP does have some direction that does support allowing this type of residential within this area. And specifically within areas that are developed to make sure that our infrastructure is efficiently used and that we're providing for a diversity of housing options within the community. In addition to the MVP and the regulations of the R2 site, when we're considering the development permit that would change of use, which would come forward if this rezoning were to proceed, we would have to also make sure that the development abides by the parking and loading facilities of the land use bylaw, as well as the entrances and exits. We don't foresee any issues with respect to that. And this land is outside of our IDP areas, so we did not refer this to any of our neighboring municipalities. So the main question for the town, as we look at this land use bylaw amendment application, is whether this use is compatible with the adjacent uses. We have had residential in this area for quite some time, so that supports it. There is also residential that is nearby. We have an R2 and R3 district that's about 150 meters away from the subject site. But we are in the middle of the institutional area and the across the street from the industrial area. So it is a little bit like a spot zoning. And this land wasn't 100% developed to our residential standards. We do require, and the MVP does require, that the residential neighborhood has a sidewalk on at least one side of the street. That is not the case in this area. So that's something that we would have to work with the landowner and consider at the development permit stage. And as I previously mentioned, we would also need to consider updating the municipal development plan to make sure that the future land use concept is consistent with the proposal. So it's administration's intention to bring forward this bylaw for readings at the next council meeting, which would be on February 26th. That's my presentation. I can take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Councillors on virtual, do you have any questions at this point?
Not at this point for me.
None from me.
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, councillors in the room. You mentioned a sidewalk, so if there's no sidewalk all along that street, would the sidewalk then just be in front of this block?
So we left it open-ended. I wasn't 100% specific because we would definitely want to consider how we might want to address that. And that's something that's coming up both specific to the site, but also as part of the active transportation plan and a number of other things. And the easy answer would be that, but we also know that the property to the east does have a significant slope right at the curb line. So that makes continuing that sidewalk not a very easy thing to do. It's a more complicated build, so we wouldn't want to mandate a sidewalk being built knowing that it could never be a part of the network. So we want to make sure we're doing that carefully. So we don't know exactly what our requirement would be at this point, but we're having that conversation internally.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors?
It's too bad there's not a sidewalk along that street because it's probably one of the most traversed areas, given that it's like two schools and the whole one side of town is that doesn't walk to school is gonna go through there. So is there any opportunity potentially to make the street one sidewalk width narrower at some point? That might not have anything to do with this situation, but this could be another discussion for later.
It's prompting thoughts about how to close that gap, and this could potentially be an opportunity to help with that, but we don't have the exact answer yet.
Councillor Carr?
This sidewalk, now does that just apply to residential or is that commercial and residential? In our bylaw?
In terms of the municipal development plan, the policy specifically states that in residential, there will be a sidewalk on one side of the street.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no further questions at this point. I will now call on those in favor of the bylaw if they would like to step forth and present anything to us. So if you just come forward to where Ms. Modi was, and I think the microphone's probably still on, and you could just state your name and whatever you'd like to say to us.
Thank you for the opportunity to address council. My name is Connie Foster. I'm Facility Support Team Lead for CARE Human Services. Our motto is independence, well-being, and inclusion. We are a nonprofit organization that supports individuals with developmental disabilities. We have residences here in Peace River, Grimshaw, Grand Prairie, and Saskatoon Lake. We have a rural property that helps people with complex needs, high behaviors. our individual needs in the Peace River residents here has changed. So right now that's a vacant property. And we are looking to get the rezoning approved so we can move forward in a different direction.
Thank you. Counselors, either virtual or in the room, have any questions? Well, thank you, Ms. Foster. And we'll go on with the rest of our proceeding here now. Thank you. Okay, I now call on any person deemed to be affected who wishes, oops, I will now call on those opposed to the bylaw. Being if they would come forward. Nobody seems to be coming forward, so I will now call on any person deemed to be affected who wishes to be heard. Coming forward. Is there a concluding statement that Ms. Modi would like to give?
I have none, your worship.
Okay. Okay, then, seeing that all presentations have been made, I will now declare the public hearing closed at 5:16 p.m. Thank you. And so this will be upcoming at a future meeting, and we'll proceed with the rest of the hearing then. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have a presentation from the Peace River Regional Airport Association, and William Stewart, Airport Manager, is here to inform us. Well, welcome.
Your Worship, members of council, members of administration. Thank you for having me. This person's just going to get my presentation set up so that it's available for those online. In theory.
While you're waiting, what does AAE stand for? If it's after your name.
Accredited Airport Executive.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, we should be in business. Very good. Thank you. Perfect. So, as we've said, I'm William Stewart, AAE. I'm the airport manager for the Peace River Regional Airport. I've been for a little bit. I was previously the airport manager while the town ran the airport, and I'm now under contract with the Peace River Regional Airport Association. So why are you here? Isn't the airport closed? We'll start with the real blunt. No, we're not closed. That's not the case. We're open for business. And I'd like to go through some of the stuff that we've got going on at the airport, some of our successes, some of our challenges. And at the end, I'm very keen to answer any questions as openly and honestly as I can. So let's have a conversation about this is my goal. So what we're going to cover today, some of our successes. I'm going to give you our financials because I know that's been a topic of debate for a while. NAV Canada closure, regional funding, and some coming events we've got going on. So first off, we'll start this wonderful presentation with all the good stuff we're doing. We'll set us up for success. Increased aircraft movements. So in the last 3 years, it's been a steady increase. Like everybody, we're affected a little bit by COVID, less so than some of the bigger airports. But we did see a significant dip during COVID, and we are recovering from that as we see a number of different carriers operating in and out of the airport. As I've said, we've weathered COVID. That caused a fair bit of strain, actually. There was a number of issues that a lot of the operators out of the airport were having with staffing and dealing with the entire thing that is COVID. So we've increased airport's tenants. So I was trying to figure it out because I didn't bring my list with me because I'm not prepared. But I do believe that we're up to a dozen airport tenants at this point, commercial tenants. I've got another individual interested in a private hangar, and as we carry on, there'll be some more that's going on. New and improved water co-op agreement. So the old water co-op agreement, when things were taken over by the Peace River Regional Airport Association, was actually signed with Transport Canada. So it hadn't moved to the town, and as the association took over, we inherited the old Transport Canada agreement. It wasn't set up in such a way that worked for the co-op or for the airport. And it was causing grief for both of us. So after some negotiation and discussion, we were able to get that sorted out. And we have a new agreement that allows for expansion while making sure that we don't cripple the water co-op setup. So very positive. Maintain continuity. So I've said that I worked for the airport when the town ran the airport. Our head operator, Mr. Bill Coates, he worked for the town with me when we ran the airport, and we've since taken him on as a staff member as well. So, you know, we've got the knowledge behind the field, and we continue to use that. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side of the fence you're on, Mr. Coates has announced he's going to be retiring this spring. So we have a new individual that's just about completely trained up that'll be taking over for him. But still, we've got that knowledge available, and we'll be keeping Mr. Coates on a seasonal basis. Long-term forestry lease. So this is a funny story that I love telling. My very first day working for the town of Peace River, I was in the CAO's office getting my paperwork signed, and he got a phone call from forestry wanting to talk about their lease. And he said, "Oh, I've got the new airport manager sitting right here." And that was the very first thing I did as airport manager when I worked for the town. And my entire time here, through multiple changes in management at forestry, we never did manage to get the lease signed. And I don't blame the town, just to be perfectly clear on that. It was one of those back and forth deals, and it just never came through. And I'm proud to say that the Peace River Regional Airport Association has managed to sign a 25-year lease with forestry with an increased footprint. And we're currently in negotiations for 2 airside lots to accompany that lease, increasing the footprint again. So a big part of running our airport, the people that we work with. So we talked about forestry. They're one of our biggest partners, and frankly, they're one of the biggest airport users. So we had a massive forest fire season last year. They operated out of our airport. We have a significant camp in there right now. We just had 2 more buildings actually move in, a recreation facility that they've moved in. They moved in last week, so they are preparing to gear up. I looked at the fire situation here a couple days ago. We have 55 fires burning in the province right now. So unfortunately, hopefully not, but unfortunately, it looks like we're in for another fire bust season. COPA, I'm not going to read that to you. That sounds like a form of torture, but needless to say, general aviation at our airport is another really important thing. We're not a certified airport. We don't have scheduled traffic at this time. So an increase in just general users, small airplanes, flying farmers, that kind of thing is important. Mr. Henry Voss, who's the treasurer and Alberta Northwest Territories director, was kind enough to write us a bit of a letter stating his appreciation. The Peace Regional Air Show. We've done 2 successful past air shows since the transition. The town did a bunch more before that. And we were the first ever short takeoff and landing drag race event in Canada, period. Number 1, Transport Canada used us to evaluate and set the rules for that event moving forward. So we've been working with them in a very regulatory intense environment successfully. Yeah, it's great. I absolutely love air shows. I'm in this because I love aviation, so I'm keen to keep that trend going. And once again, a quote from Vicky. I asked for a sentence or 2, just to be perfectly clear. And they love us so much they had to write a short novel. So North Caribou Air, they've been operating regular service in and out, not scheduled. You can't buy a ticket to get on them, but they're running crews in and out of our airport. So they're running in and out with the regional jets and the 1900s. On a fairly regular basis, so just about weekly they're coming and going at this point in time. Alrighty, money, that's why we're all here, right? So prior to the transfer, the Peace Regional Airport operated at a loss. 2020 was $662,000 in loss. So currently we operate at a loss. However, it's $260,000. So that's a 40% improvement in financial position. So I'm not here to tell you, yes, we're making money hand over fist and we've turned a sowsier into a purse, but we're doing a lot better than things had been done. We have that luxury because we're not a municipality and we don't have some of the restrictions that the municipality had. There's no doubt about that. Again, not knocking the town of Peace River. I need to be clear about that. It was a very well-run airport when the town was running it. We've been afforded some changes that we can make that allows us to save that money. One of those changes that we've made is an increase in revenue. We've changed how landing fees are calculated. We've increased the rent from forestry specifically in a significant fashion by increasing their footprint and modernizing the lease rate that they pay. That has had a huge impact. And then increasing the different lots that are leased out. There are certain areas that were vacant that we're now leasing that helps generate revenue as well. So sorry, our revenue change, there was an increase of $197,000. So our year end for 2022 was negative $261,000. Okay, Nav Canada Flight Service Station, bit of the elephant in the room on this. So timeline for the closure, and they are closing. That has been announced. Transport Canada has agreed to that, so it's a thing that is happening. At this point, we put in our statement that we oppose that. Unfortunately, we were disregarded and they moved forward with the closure. So the date that I've been heard tossed around, and I have no confirmation at all, just to be upfront, is August 2024. We are working with Nav Canada on how we're going to continue operating once they leave, and it does have some impacts on us. Operationally, the impact should be limited. There will be some impact, there's no doubt about that. But for us, operating the airport, it will be limited. Weather observation is currently provided by on-site staff. We are receiving an automated weather observation system provided by Nav Canada with camera systems. It's not as good as a person. There's no doubt about that at all, but it's pretty decent. And it is commonplace at smaller fields across Canada. RCAL, so airport lighting controlled by pilots. They click the mic 3 times and it makes the lights turn on, and they can click it again to turn them dimmer and that kind of thing. We'll have that installed before the tower is closed permanently. So that won't have a problem with nighttime operations. The financial impact of Nav Canada leaving, we currently receive $11,000 a year of rent. So we will lose that. Yes, $11,000 a year. That said, we're currently paying $12,000 a month in utilities for that building. So I'm not saying we're going to completely shut the building down because that wrecks the building and we don't want to do that. However, we can turn the lights off and turn the temp down an awful lot. And I expect that $12,000 monthly bill to decrease significantly moving forward. For what it's worth, the terminal building itself, we do have a tenant in the building that once we get a firm timeline on when things will be closing, that we will be working a deal with to see if there's another suitable location at the airport. But with the utility cost, ultimately, that's a difficult decision we're gonna have to make about how we're gonna do that. If anybody's keen to lease our terminal building, I will lease it to you for $1 a year triple net. Any idea at all? Be a great paintball arena. I'm wide open, Byron. What do you got?
Why don't we film a zombie apocalypse movie?
I'm good with zombie apocalypse movie. That sounds good. All right. The real hard part of this presentation, regional funding. So the Peace River Regional Airport continues to be an important asset. The Peace River Regional Airport Association has established operations in a financially improved state for over 3 years. We are running this like a business, and we are doing what we can to run it in the most efficient way possible. We are seeking municipal assistance at this point in time. We're losing money. We've improved our standing greatly, but there's no changing the fact that it's not a money-making venture, unfortunately. I don't have a solid dollar figure ask. I didn't think that was fair. However, I will say that you'll be acknowledged by the Peace River Regional Airport Association through any advertising. We have editorial coming out in a magazine this year that we will acknowledge our sponsors in, or contributors, I guess is the proper term. Any social media will be included that there's been money received from any of our municipal partners that decide to move forward and such. One slide to that, I figured that was enough. You can ask me hard questions afterwards. Coming events, we've been selected as a destination for the Alberta Air Tour this year. And by destination, I mean we're the final destination. We're the cherry on top. So there's quite a few aircraft that participate in this. MLA Shane Getson is involved in this and will be flying with it. We will be having a barbecue and a car show when they arrive. We're inviting vendors to come out and participate, and it should be a heck of a deal to get everybody in the community out to come and learn about airplanes and aviation in general. And the idea from their point is to get people out and check out aviation, and on the other end of the coin, have people come and check out communities that maybe they wouldn't have come to originally. So their goal is to be a bit of an economic driver in that end, and while drawing people into the addictive drug that it's aviation. So. Now, my favorite part of this, I'm open to answer any questions you may have for me.
Councillor Scammer?
Hear about certain regional carriers, kind of flying over every day. Is this a possibility that one might just kind of make a stop in here every now and then? And what would it take to sort of make that happen, both with, say, a regional carrier and what would have to happen at the airport proper?
Yeah, I knew SCED service was going to come up. It has to, right? We're keen. If we get a regional carrier in here, we've done limited talks with some unnamed regional carriers, 3 of them to be exact. The catch right now is we're still in the pilot shortage, and to add extra stops or need extra aircraft is really difficult. From a regulatory point of view, it's real easy. It takes 30 days to get an exemption that allows scheduled carriers to use our airport. And after that, we have 6 months to complete all the paperwork required to certify the airport again. The airport was certified. I hate to tell you this as a former employee, I didn't shred all the old paperwork. So we do need to update some manuals, there's no doubt about it, but we are in a position, infrastructure wise, where we meet the regs. We would need to update our paperwork and submit that to Transport Canada for approval, but ultimately we could have a carrier flying out of here in 30 days. I've done this in the past at another airport that I've run. It took longer than 30 days because the federal government was slow. But the new rules are their own rules, 30-day turnaround on request for exemption unless they have a good reason not to.
So if you were to get a scheduled airline were to start landing and so on, there must be some expenses associated with that. So it isn't always, always positive money or.
Yeah, no, it all doesn't flow into our pocket, unfortunately. There is an increased regulatory burden. We need to maintain a number of manuals. We need to upgrade our safety plan. Currently, we meet federal OH&S regulations. We would need to change to a federal safety management system, which is significantly different and much more burdensome. And frankly, if we're going to have a carrier in here, we would inevitably require more staffing in order to facilitate the timing, unless it just happens to line up in our regular hours of operation, but it just never does. So I would plan for an increase in staffing operations. That said, I believe that revenue generated by a scheduled carrier would at least offset any extra expenses through landing fees and passenger recruitment fees.
Thank you. Councilors, other questions? Mr. Ford?
Good to see you again, Mr. Stewart. With the terminology, certified and not being certified, with the airport not being certified at this specific time, does that have any effect on the air show group being able to have the snowbirds come and perform?
I can't speak to certification versus registered directly with the snowbirds. But I can say that the snowbirds have changed their rules about length of runway required for operations. And Peace River no longer meets the minimum length requirement for runway. So unless we extend our runway, unfortunately, the snowbirds will not be able to perform in Peace River unless they operate from a different location. And I'm not sure if they allow that.
What kind of length are we talking about?
I believe we're 1,000 feet short.
Quite significant. Deputy Mayor Shannon, you have a question?
Yes, how long has it been, since it's been decertified?
That's a really good question. I want to say it's been 3 years that we've transitioned to registered. It was shortly after I was brought on under contract.
And so what was the reasoning behind that, like just expense or no need?
A little of both, actually. The way that Transport Canada is running things lately, it's a bit of a move for certified airports that no longer require the certification to move to a registered. The reason to be a certified airport is if you have scheduled traffic, if you're in a built-up area, or if the minister deems it so for public safety. We don't meet any of those criteria, so the requirement to do so was eliminated. And in order to free ourselves from some of the regulatory burden, increased regulatory burden by being certified as opposed to registered, we made the move to registered.
And just to Mayor Manser's question, you don't have a ballpark figure of what it would take for us to become a certified airport again?
Cost-wise, sorry?
Mhm. Yes.
No, it wouldn't be that much. We would need someone. The way my contract is set up, I would be unable to maintain the manuals and the safety plan and that end of things. So we'd have to increase administration costs to manage those plans. That would be really the big significant chunk of it. I don't have an idea on what the costing on that would be. There are
Okay.
companies out there that will do that though.
And my final question is, if you're unable to secure money from municipalities, what will you do? Like, how will you continue? You can't continue to operate at a loss every year. So do you have a plan B? What would that be if you do?
Ultimately, we do still have some money in the bank. We're not ready to shut the doors and run away just yet. We continue to drive upward with our number of landings and increase land leases. But ultimately, if we're unable to make the airport work, whether that's through funding from municipalities or other means, then the way that the transfer agreement was written, the airport would revert back to the town of Peace River.
Thank you very much.
Councilors, any other questions? Councilor Davenport?
So you mentioned with NAV Canada moving out, is that kind of a special thing just for Peace River, or did you know anything else maybe that you could kind of give us a little more context about why they might be making some of those changes, perhaps here and elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. So just before COVID, NAV Canada did a big study on a number of sites across Canada. And then as COVID hit, NAV Canada moved forward to close almost all of them. Transport Canada at that time said, no, you can't do that. You're trying to save money due to the reduction in air traffic during COVID. You can't just close every site that you want to. You're here to operate a facility for the nation. Following COVID, they've reopened a whole bunch of those studies that they've done. They're closing can't remember the name of the two sites. There's two sites up east of there. They've moved forward with closing. They've reduced operations in a number of different sites. Brandon, Manitoba had its hours slashed by 50%. And it's just a big reduction kind of across Canada at a number of locations. We were one of the first ones. And that's just a fact, but we're not alone in that. And I don't feel that it should be viewed as a negative shot at the Airport Association or the town of Peace River at all. They just saw a reduction in the number of aircraft using the airport. And with the loss of our sched traffic, that had an impact as well.
Does NAV Canada pay for whatever the software is that pilots can just tap and have the lights come on, or how does that work?
We maintain a radio station for aviation use at the airport, and that will interface with, basically it's a two-way radio connected to the lighting system. And as the pilots come inbound, they dial that specific frequency, and it allows them to click the mic to turn the lights on. It's a fairly common system across Canada. Ensures that you can have an unmanned nighttime operation.
Are you on a municipal tour sort of thing, or?
That's the idea. I go tomorrow morning to the County of Northern Sunrise, and I'm currently lining up the County of Northern Lights and the MPFPs.
So, and there has been no change in the ownership. I don't know, the number of owners, I guess you would say. Everything is as it was, or is it changed at all?
There's been some changes in the board. We've reduced the number of members on the board by 2 at this point in time. It is still owned and operated by the Peace River Regional Airport Association. Just the way the board is set up has changed.
Well, it sounds like forestry's been quite helpful to the whole operation, and congratulations for getting them to sign on the dotted line for 25 plus years. That's quite an accomplishment, I think. So thank you. Councilors, any further questions? Deputy Mayor Shannon?
Yeah, I just have one final one on the NAV Canada part. So you mentioned that it was because of a drop in flights. So if we were to get, by some miracle, get really busy and pick up again, would NAV Canada come in then and replace that with individual service again? Or is that, like, how does that work? If you're not flying, they leave. If you're going to fly a lot, do they come back?
If things pick up a whole bunch, yes, they do come back. It is difficult. I will not beat around the bush on that. I've seen it happen twice in my career. Once in Red Deer, they changed, I think they went from an ATC to a flight service station, and they went and upgraded it again. Once they pull out, to go back is quite difficult. It's very costly for them. I would suggest that if we were going to see anything in Peace River, it would be the new unmanned tower model that NAV Canada is working towards, where you have a physical individual watching a number of very, very large screens with a bunch of cameras, and they provide a flight service station from wherever they are, a remote location. They're currently test driving that in Ontario. I can't remember the name of the small airport in Ontario. And frankly, it's the direction they're moving for. I'm going to be willing to bet most regional airports that have flight service station people out.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation, and all I can say at this time is good luck with your operations and so forth. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, next up, we have bylaws. We have bylaw 2146, assessment of designated manufactured homes in manufactured home community. Excuse me. And Mr. Mugford is coming forth to tell us about this.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Have before you this evening, a request for decision on second reading of bylaw 2146, assessment of designated manufactured homes in a manufactured home community. This was brought before council for first reading January 22nd, 2024. The RFD, the language of the RFD is largely the same, except we added a section subsequent to council granting first reading on bylaw 2146. The administration met with the operators of the town's 3 manufactured home communities to discuss their concerns and have offered to assist in communicating this change in process to their tenants prior to it coming into effect. Administration also commenced advertising of this bylaw through social media, town's website, and through postings at the town's office to ensure the public is informed of the proposed change. So again, the options before council are to provide second reading for bylaw 2146. The advantages to this bylaw is that it will reduce administrative burden for town staff, improve collectability of property taxes receivable, and by allowing second reading, we're only bringing forth second reading this evening rather than second and third to allow for additional time for it to circulate through the public for feedback prior to being adopted. Disadvantage of this bylaw is it's additional work for the manufactured home community operators, and it shifts the responsibility of collection to them. Option 2 would be for council to decline providing second reading to bylaw 2146. Again, the advantages would be less work for the manufactured home community operators. The disadvantages would be the ongoing administrative burden for staff, and the risk of collection would be primarily the town. The recommendation for council this evening is to provide second reading of bylaw 2146, assessment of designated manufactured homes in a manufactured home. I'll take any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have some data on sort of any lost revenue attributed to tenants moving in and out and not being caught at the right time to pay their taxes in the past? That's impossible.
I need a more specific question to provide specific information. Depends on the time period that you're looking at.
Okay.
It will generally come before council in the form of a request for a write-off at a certain point in time.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, questions? Councilor Stammelhorn?
Is there a way to quantify the amount of administrative time that gets sunk into this, idea? Like what kind of a burden are you saving? Potentially to quantify that or?
I can't put a specific number to how much of our taxation clerk and utility clerk's time is spent addressing issues that come from the developers. I can say a high level rough number. If you look at our property tax receivable, the volume, so the number of individual properties that have a balance that is delinquent, so more than a year in arrears. The 3 trailer park communities represent the majority of the volume. Now, in terms of the actual dollars owed, they're a small percentage. But again, that drives at the issue. When we looked at options to enforce in terms of bailiffs and things like that, it's $400 per instance just to begin the process. And what we've run into quite often is by the time that we are able to commence collection under what the MGA allows, quite often there's no way to track people down.
Thank you. Any further questions, Deputy Mayor?
So, when you state like why, I understand why you're doing it, but the advantages seem to be at someone else's expense. Do you know what the costs are going to be passed on to someone else who probably isn't experienced in tax collection or whatever? If it's passed on, they're going to have a certain administration fee it'll cost them, which will be passed down to the tenants. So do you know a rough number of that, like what the cost would be that's going to be passed down to the actual users?
So I can't really speculate on what that cost would be, because I don't know the details of specifically what mechanisms they can use to collect. I know, in terms of what the MGA allows for the town. But it's important to recognize, Deputy Mayor, currently the costs associated with this collection are spread amongst all taxpayers. So, basically like with any business, the cost of a bad debt gets spread amongst all of your other customers. The same is true for the town. So right now the town is paying the cost of the administrative burden of collecting, which is onerous to the point that in many instances it doesn't make sense to pursue. But also the actual write-off, the lost revenue from those customers that don't pay.
And is there any way that system can be improved to somehow not have so many of those delinquent accounts? We froze?
In yours, Deputy Mayor,
I can hear now.
could you repeat your question, please?
Oh, I'm just wondering if the procedures or the way you do that collection could be improved any so that there aren't so many losses, or is that already been tried? And
I can't speak to whether or not there's a potential change that could be done to the MGA that would allow for this to occur, but this is the mechanism that's been successful in other jurisdictions.
thank you.
Councillor Ford?
Thank you. I just want to make sure I heard correctly. So at this point in time, you don't have any numbers of losses due to trailers moving out of whatever trailer park. So you don't have any of those numbers?
Councillor Ford, I've got, internally, we have our list of customers that are delinquent and in arrears. The MGA allows for that information to become public once it reaches a certain point in the process. But I can't provide that information to council at this time. Again, we would need to go back through prior year write-offs to determine what the average cost of this is, strictly from a write-off perspective to the town. And again, I could provide information. It would be a rough estimate because again, it would vary, but in terms of the amount of time that is spent pursuing collection internally and in instances where we've used external resources to do so.
So no estimated numbers from last year?
Again, I don't have that information in a manner that I can present. I provided a rough estimate of approximately the volume of customers that we're talking about. But I can't speak to any individual circumstances.
CAO Miller?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make a couple of points which I think are of relevance, and that is, as a municipality, we have to wait for 2 full years for the property to be in arrears. And then once they're 2 full years in arrears, then we have to give notice and put notification on the title of the property. And that has to go 1 more year before we can actually even take action. So the trailer properties, as said, the trailer may not necessarily have been pulled out of the lot, but may have changed hands 2 or 3 times before we can actually initiate action, because it's 3 years and then council has to set the auction date. So often it's going into 4 years. We have to try to collect arrears, where if it switches over, taxation collection switches to the mobile park, then they only are challenged with trying to collect that current year's taxes on a monthly basis or whatever. We do have some mobile homes that do pay quite regularly, they pay monthly, but there's no challenge. So the risk there of the property, the landowners to suffer any loss is far less. Because they can deal with it instantly and they have mechanisms, because if they don't pay their lot rent, they work to collect these debts regularly and they have the mechanism and they know how to do it. And so their risk is very little as opposed to the municipalities, as I said, because we have to go 3 years and then some before we can even begin to take action. So at this time too, we are just seeking second reading. And we could bring some numbers back if you so wanted to have some more information on what kind of debt we're looking at. But regardless, it is debt that is gets written off because it's the cost benefit of us administration attempting to collect that debt is 99% is not worth the benefit of chasing it.
Councillor Carr?
So if somebody is in arrears, how would that change by handing that off to the trailer park owner? Like it doesn't make sense to me for a number of reasons. And I've given it quite a bit of thought. I understand why we want to do it. I absolutely understand that, but it just seems like weird, and I understand what you said about they have different mechanisms to collect, but if he's not gonna pay you, chances are he's not gonna pay the trailer park owner either. Is there a way that we can, I hate to use the word lien the property, to ensure that the transaction of the sale of the trailer does not go through until such time as the taxes are paid? Is there anything like that available?
No, sorry, so that's where our hands are tied. We can't do anything until year 3. So 2 years after, when they're in arrears, then we have to file a notice. And then not until year 3 afterwards is when we can actually start doing anything to attempt to collect. So the trailer owners, when it moves to the property owner, there will be no arrears. They're gonna be starting off with their fresh taxes because the arrears won't go with them. They will just get taxed that current year. And typically they run around $200, $300, $400 a year. So, and there are mechanisms. We've suggested to the park owners to go speak to the other property owned tax, the other park owners who are already have this in place. To see how it's working for them and get some, best practices and get some advice. But they would only be collecting the current amount, which might be another $20 per month. So if they're not paying their rent on their lot, I suggest if they're paying their rent on their lot and taxes are included in that, they're gonna pay. And they know with us, we have no ability for 3 full years. And
Yeah, I
then
understand.
some, yeah.
But every individual mobile home is gonna have a different assessment and therefore will have a different dollar value applied to whether it be annually or monthly.
Yes.
From what I understand, a period of time ago, there was a transaction where a trailer was going to be sold and they came to the town and asked if about the outstanding taxes to make sure and they were told they would have to FOIP that. Now, how are they gonna do that on every trailer in the trailer park?
So, sorry. So, they would not be able to ever FOIP, just to be clear. Nobody can ever FOIP and ask how much is remaining due on an account. So they might be able to, and it's not FOIP, anybody at any time can go onto our GIS system and take a look at a property value. And then do a quick calculation to the mill rate and figure out what your assessment would be on that particular property. But nobody has the right to ask if you paid your taxes and how much is left on your balance.
I think that's where the problem was, because if it was 2 years in arrear,
We're not allowed to disclose that, and
Yes.
not until we go into the 3rd year that we're allowed to put an arrears amount.
okay, but if you're not allowed to disclose that, how is the
So,
owner of the trailer park going to collect that?
so what happens then is the trailer park then becomes the assessed person. So on their assessment, they will get their land assessment, so much, and then they will get, I'm imagining, and we were gonna validate with our assessor how it will work, but I'm imagining then on their tax assessment bill, they're gonna have lot one, assessed value, $30,000, and this is the levy, lot two, so it'll be individualized for them for each in particular trailer, because they're gonna need to know how much to collect from that person. My understanding is that they are not allowed to collect any more than the tax that's levied, so I'm not sure about an administration fee, that's nothing I'm familiar with, but I do know that they do have to square up, just like us. If we start doing prepayments and people, pay, and then when we levy in May, we need to square up and adjust the payment. So again, that would be for the park to figure out their best method and their best means. But it's a for-profit business. And
That I understand, but I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not against anybody making a profit. That's why they're doing it is because they want to make a profit. And with this change, proposed change, it's going to become, instead of a huge administrative cost to the town, time-wise and money-wise, it's then gonna be a huge administrative cost to the trailer park owner, which then will be added on, which will not be $20 or $30 per month on a trailer anymore. It could be quite a bit more. And my concern, this is my biggest concern of the whole thing, is that a lot of these people in living in these mobile homes are living pretty tight to the line, and we are just going to assess them more cost in addition, which could add to our homeless problem. And that is probably my biggest concern of the whole thing. It seems, and I understand why we're doing it, but it just seems we are taking an administrative nightmare and just handing it off to a trailer, mobile home park owner or operator, because they're for profit, and that is not a good reason in my mind.
Okay, so Counselor Ford?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So, and it kind of relates to a comment that Councillor Carr made. So if I'm understanding this correctly, currently, the land in the trailer park, the assessment goes to the trailer park owner. The assessment for the trailer goes to the trailer owner. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes.
Okay, so if I compare a trailer in a trailer park compared to my residence where I live, I get the assessment on the land and I get the assessment on my home. However, if I was to sell my home, those unpaid taxes go with the sale of the home. So why would that not be the case with a trailer if a trailer changes ownership?
CAO Miller?
I can answer that. Because 99% of real estate property sales are transacted through a lawyer. And the lawyer will then look for a tax certification that comes out of our office saying, what's paid and what's due, and those taxes do then get paid through the sale, proceeds of the sale, and directed to us. Most often, mobile homes, it's like a vehicle. Lots of times it's just a cash transaction. And so between parties, and unless that party that's purchasing was to ask for that certification, there's no lawyer asking for it, right? So it's buyer beware on that particular side of it. There's no protection for us whatsoever as a municipality. And the buyer, it doesn't affect the buyer because there's nothing that can be seized other than the trailer, and it's no longer in their name. So there's no risk to a new buyer because the taxes are not registered. It's like a vehicle, and so if we have to put a lien on it, when it comes time when we can actually do collections, then we have to go put a lien on it, like you're liening your vehicle, and then somebody has to go and check their register to see if there's any lien on that. I did want to make a point in that, to Councillor Carr. I don't see it as a burden, and I think that maybe we should do some research on that from other trailer parks, because again, as I mentioned to the current owners, we can fill space with all kinds of dark ideas and how much work and everything it's going to be. Personally, I believe it's gonna be less burden on the taxpayer, because if you don't pay your bill, we have significant interest rates on taxes. Unpaid taxes is one of the highest interest rates charged, and you get charged 2 or 3 times a year. And so if they're paying to the park owner on a monthly basis, because you can bet the park owners are not gonna let them go in arrears with their rent or their taxes, they're not gonna be paying the burden of all that interest. But by the time they get to us, 3 years in, you're paying interest on top of interest on top of interest at one of the highest rates possible. And so in my mind, if we are ever able to collect, we would do far better service to those who are financially burdened, collecting it on a monthly basis than allowing them to go in arrears.
Okay, so I think, Deputy, or Councillor Scanlon.
I think what we have, and this comes up generally around election years, well, what municipalities need to do is they need to find efficiencies and cut costs, and that's exactly what this is. That's exactly what that looks like. So if every time the municipality comes and says, look, here's a way that we can shift the cost and the administrative burden onto those directly affected and not spread it out the damages, or we're asking every taxpayer in town to pay if we don't cut down the administrative time and if we don't cut down our losses and all that kind of stuff in this regard, then we're just saying everyone else can pay for somebody else's delinquency, and I don't think that's fair to everybody either. So in this instance, I would say it's almost in my mind a no-brainer in that we are saving administrative time, we are saving administrative costs, and we are saving every taxpayer in town is going to affect some sort of savings. This maybe it's not significant, but I don't think it's one we want to take off the table.
Okay, new points, Councillor Ford?
Yeah, my concern still is like I'd like to see some kind of numbers, but like how often does this actually happen with the amount of trailers that we have in town?
So, CAO Miller, please, correct me here. If we pass, second reading with some questions to be brought back for further information before third reading would, either decide change or no change. Could do that, right?
Correct, yes, we pass second reading and then send us some questions, and we will make sure to have some answers before, or at the time it's brought for third reading.
And if we wanted to quantify some of the data, we should be fairly specific and not expect 20 years of information sort of thing or whatever. Okay, any further points that have not already been brought up? Would someone care to put forth a motion so we could decide or go forward on this matter?
Okay, I'll move that council give second reading to bylaw 2146, assessment of designated manufactured homes in a manufactured home community bylaw.
Okay, and if we were to pass this, the idea is that we will send questions to admin in a timely fashion so that we can allow them some time to figure out a few things before it comes up for third reading. Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, then all those in favor of the motion? Okay, now I need to. Councillor Wojciech, are you voting?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so all those opposed? Councillor Ford, I can't hear you.
Oh. I'm opposed.
Okay, it is defeated as it is a tie vote. So what does that mean? Oh, I thought it was.
I think it's defeated.
Well, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. All those in favor, I had myself and Councillor Scammahorn. Opposed, I had Ford, Boychuk, Shannon, and Carr. So it is defeated. Thank you. Okay, so does that mean that the change is deleted? Okay, so that's the end of that matter. Okay, next up, we have fees and changes bylaw for 2024, the bylaw 2147, and amendment bylaw 2148. And CAO Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before you request for decision is adoption of the 2024 fees and charges bylaw. So as outlined in the request for decision, it's standard practice for an annual review of municipal fees and charges. And so there was 4 schedules attached to this bylaw under Schedule A and D for corporate services and protective services. There was a detailed review and increase in corporate services and fire rates last year, so there was really no changes recommended this year on those schedules. Although under the assessment review board fees and rates under this bylaw, there was a change to bring us in line with our neighboring areas. Under community services, you'll see all I believe they should all be redlined, the changes that were proposed. There's on average an increase of 2%. Some fees in the VTEX as outlined in the request for decision are increased by 5% because they haven't been increased for 3 years. And then in addition, the pool courses and whatnot have been increased to reflect current costs to operate the program for course materials and whatnot. There is no increase proposed for pool admissions and museums. Again, we're going to look at our practice on how often we review these and bring recommendations forward for next year for the 2025 fees and charges. Schedule C, there was only one recommended change. That's the environmental search and site assessment fee to better reflect time spent and best practice. And other than that, I think it was pretty straightforward, those that were marked up. So we are just looking for first reading at this time.
Thank you. Okay, any questions, first of all, on this? Okay, someone be prepared to move us forward with the motion then. Councillor Ford,
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd move that council provide first reading to bylaw 2147 and 2148.
one at a time. Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Ford, if you wouldn't mind, we're going to do them one at a time. So perhaps Councillor Ford, would you move that council give first reading to bylaw 2147, the fees and changes bylaw for 2024?
So moved.
Thank you. Any question or any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
Or did you vote? Did you vote?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
it is carried. Thank you. And then perhaps someone could bring forth a motion for bylaw 2148.
I'll move the council give first reading to bylaw number 2148, amendment to bylaw 2075.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
In
Aye.
favor.
In favor.
For card, did you,
Yes, I did.
sorry,
Yes.
I'm not catching
That's-
everything here. It is carried. Thank you. Unfinished business, we don't seem to have any unfinished business, so on to new business. Subdivision application extension request for, I don't know how I'm supposed to, sub 2022-02. Ms. Modi is going to tell us about this.
Yes, so before you is a request for decision to extend subdivision approval. This application was approved first in February 24th of 2023. Subject to conditions, the applicant continues to work on meeting those conditions, but has not met them all. So we're not in the position of being able to endorse the subdivision and have it registered to land titles. The MGA has a 1-year time limit, so that's not something we set, that's something that is in the provincial legislation. And the MGA likewise gives council the authority to extend a subdivision approval. So we are coming forward because the applicant has requested additional time to work on their condition. And in order to grant that, we need to bring this to council for your decision. So the first option is to extend the time that the subdivision had, this applicant has, sorry, to within 2 years, so till February 24th of 2025 would be the new deadline. And that gives the applicant additional time to meet the subdivision approval. It means that we do not have to process a new application because that would be what they would need to do if they did not get this extension. Then they'd have to come forward and we'd have to go through the subdivision process again. And nothing has materially changed in this area with respect to our bylaws or policies or with respect to the land, to the best of our knowledge. So there's no reason to not extend it. And it means that we don't have to take the time to do that. It does mean that we are eliminating expenses related to reprocessing the application, but we're also reducing or not taking in a new subdivision application fee, which is $750 in this case. The other option would be that we maintain the 1-year deadline, which would mean that the clock is ticking and will run out later this month. And that would require the applicant to reapply and require the subdivision authority to reprocess should they reapply. And it does mean that we would gain that subdivision application fee, but we would also gain an additional body of work to process that application. So we do have a recommendation that council directs that subdivision decision is extended and that there's a 2-year timeline from the original date of approval, which was February 24th, 2023. The subdivision decision and conditions that the applicant is working on meeting are attached to this RFD for council's information. I can take any questions that you might have.
Councilors, Councilor Carr?
Where is this? I have a hard time with the maps and I don't know land descriptions. So.
For sure. This is up Weberville Road. So there's half quarter section on the west or east side of the road above this, and then there's this full quarter. So it's just it's in the northwest portion of the town, but on the east side of Weberville Road. If you got a COVID swab during COVID, you would have gone onto this land. That's where the testing site was.
Okay, yeah.
Any further questions? So the owner is is doing stuff.
They're moving forward. They are simply working. One of the conditions was to remove the one of the accesses onto the land. That was a condition that comes from Alberta Transportation. And they're still working on doing that.
Okay, if there's no questions, would someone put forth a motion to move us forward on this one?
I can do that. I
Thank you,
move the
Mary.
council direct the applicant for subdivision sub 2022-02 must submit to the subdivision authority a plan of subdivision or other instrument that affects the subdivision within 2 years from February 24th, 2023.
Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
In favor.
In favor.
Okay, it is carried. Okay, thank you, Ms. Modi. And next up, we have the revised business grants program policy with Ms. Modi.
Yes, so before you is a request for decision to approve the new version of the business grant program policy. The red line version of the policy was provided at the priority and governance meeting that was held on the 5th. We have not made any changes to that. So we're, just a reminder, we are aiming to simplify the policy language or clarify the policy language, simplify quote requirements for lower value items, and confirming policy intent, especially with respect to the tourism enhancement grant. Once this policy is approved or not approved, we'll be aiming to open the grant application period for the first intake period later this month. And with the hope of having our first round of application approvals by April. So before council has two options to approve, I'm sure there are three, to approve the updated business grant policy as presented, which does clarify the policy language and applicability. We'll definitely have to do some communication with the business community to make sure that they understand what the changes are so that we receive applications that we can move forward for them. The program is in budget. We have $50,000 to grant in 2024. The other option is to decline to approve the updated business grant program policy, which would maintain the original policy. So we'd still have a business grant program. It just means we wouldn't make any changes. But it does maintain some of the policy issues that we've defined, and council could provide any other direction that you might have. I can take any questions that you might have, but we recommend you move forward with the updated version.
Councilors, any questions? Would care to put forth a motion on this matter? Councilor Ford?
Yeah, I actually have one question. I just wanted to double check to make sure that the communications going out to the board that approves these grants in regards to businesses wanting to put up lighting and security systems and stuff like that. I just want to make sure that that communication has gone out or is going out.
It will be a part of the communication that goes forward as we're advertising.
Thank you.
Someone care to put forth a motion on this matter? Councilor Card?
Like the direct administration that council approves the updated business grant program policy as presented.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
In favor.
Okay, it is carried. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we have the deaccessioning collections policy 75-27-C. And Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Worship. This request for a decision is just following up from the last meeting where the Director of Community Services discussed the review of this policy. And it is around the, provides museum staff with the guidance on how to go about determining when a collection piece needs to be permanently destroyed. So as part of the museum's accreditation policy, the process, they had to have their policies reviewed. And they did some changes to this one as was presented, and now they're just looking for council to adopt the policy as changed and presented.
Thank you. Any questions on this matter? Someone care to put forth a motion?
I just got one question.
Okay.
Do we do this every year? Do we review this policy every year? Because it seems to me we did this last year.
Unfortunately, Your Worship, I'm not able to answer that. I don't know, and
Okay.
I can ask the director and then have that question answers disseminated.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so would someone care to put forth a motion on this?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd put a motion on the floor that council adopt the deaccessioning collections policy P7527C as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Mugford with the Clean Energy Improvement Program.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Administration is seeking direction from council as to whether or not to draft a bylaw for participation in the Clean Energy Improvement Program. On November 27th, council provided administration direction to perform additional research into SEEP, which is the acronym for the Energy Improvement Program. Members of administration attended a SEEP 101 course, which provided additional information. So attach the slides from that presentation to this RFD. If approved, administration will work with Alberta municipalities to draft a SEEP bylaw and identify funding sources for the program. And once the bylaw is passed, we'll work together with Alberta Munis to develop programming, which would include which energy efficient upgrades would be eligible. Additionally, once the bylaw is in place, the town can consider whether or not it makes sense to apply for federal funding through the Federation of the Canadian Municipalities Community Efficient Financing Program. So the options before council are option 1 to direct administration to draft the Clean Energy Improvement Bylaw. Advantages of this bylaw would be it would allow homeowners to access funding for renovations at a lower rate than they can digitally access, allow residents flexibility in repayment terms, improved economic activity in the region, and increase the assessed values of the properties. Disadvantages is it will consume administration and staff's time, and there's minimal financial upside for the town as an entity. Option 2 is council can decline to direct administration to draft the SEEP bylaw. Advantages would reduce the administrative staff workload. Disadvantage does not support economic activity and doesn't provide an avenue for residents to access lower cost financing. The recommendation from administration is for council to direct administration to draft Clean Energy Improvement Program bylaw to be brought back for consideration. If you don't take any questions on this stuff.
So this is a possibility where a property owner, if they decide that maybe new windows helps their, I don't know, thermal something or other on their house, that they could sort of go through this program, get the windows paid for via the tax, adding to their taxes over whatever time kind of thing. The way it goes.
Yeah, so as part of drafting after the bylaw is drafted and the program is developed, you determine which upgrades would be eligible. And so that would be, in effect, yeah, that would be what you described. So it allows for the funds to be used to pay for those renovations to be effectively borrowed for your taxes. So depending on the type of upgrade, the repayment terms, I think in the document here, it says what the maximum is, but you typically align it with the useful life of that asset. So it could be a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year repayment. If you look at other municipalities in Alberta that have done this, City of Calgary is an example, where the interest rate that is included as part of the calculation for repayment, they use for 2023, it was just 3%. So it's typically lower than what individuals can access if they would borrow the money themselves. And that is in part because of them successfully applying to FCM and gaining access to that federal grant.
So the costs stay on the title to the property until those costs are done.
Correct.
And I read someplace that the money that the municipality would put forth to, I guess, initiate the borrowing does not count against the municipality's debt limit.
That's correct.
That would be a good thing too. Okay, so questions, councilors? No questions? Would someone be prepared to put forth a motion on this matter? I can't put forth motions myself. Councillor Carr.
Like to direct, council like to direct administration to draft the Clean Energy Improvement Program bylaw.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you, Mr. Mumford. Next up, we have, council RRSP contribution program update. Mr. Mumford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a briefing note. In August of 2023, the Council Remuneration Travel and Expense Policy was updated. Line 2.7 states council members will have the option to participate in an RSP contribution program equivalent to 3% for members of council with matching contribution. Members of administration met with multiple financial agencies and have concluded that RSP contributions are not an effective utilization of these types of funds, typically designed for larger employer groups. As an alternative, council will receive the equivalent of 3% of their honorarium each year to apply to a self-directed fund of their choosing. So payments will be issued annually prior to March 1st, as that's typically the RSP contribution deadline. This line will be reviewed during the next update of this policy. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Someone care to move this briefing note for information then? Councillor Boychuk, how about you?
Sure, I can move that council accept the RSP contribution program update for information's purpose.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
In favor.
In favor.
Carried. Thank you, it is carried. Next up, council benefits coverage, Mr. Mumford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Town of Peace River transitioned to a new benefits provider on September 1st, 2023. Since then, it has been noted that benefit coverage is mandatory for all classes of employees, which includes members of council. Administration will be moving forward to enroll council in the benefits program, ensuring we are fulfilling the requirements of the plan. Members of council will be covered under the following points with responsibility for benefits premium noted in the charts below. So benefit premiums amounts are listed in the attached chart. Coverage and premiums for ADD life and dependent life will be retroactively applied to September 1st, 2023, equating to approximately $20 each for members of council to cover the member share of premiums and approximately $60 per councillor for the town to cover the employer portion of the premium. Retroactive premiums will be collected on the March payroll. Enrollment for extended health and dental coverage is also mandatory unless evidence of coverage elsewhere can be provided. Where other coverage is in place, and enrollment in these coverages is optional. Coverage and premiums will be effective March 1st, 2024, with deductions also starting on the March payroll. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors?
So if we have other coverage, we can opt out of this altogether?
No, you can opt out of the health and dental.
Okay.
I don't believe you're able to opt out of the ADD life, dependent life.
Don't suppose the dental covers orthodontics by any chance?
I don't believe so.
No.
So would someone care to move this for information, perhaps?
I can move that the council accept the briefing note regarding council benefits coverage for information.
You?
Just if I may, Ms. Parsons just pointed out that the healthcare spending accounts, those funds could be used for the.
Okay. We have a motion before us. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you, Mr. Mumford. Okay, and next up, we have RCMP 2024-2025 Community Policing Priorities without, oh, did I skip something? Oops, sorry. Mr. Mumford's still on the chair, and he's now going to tell us about town debt and debenture listing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor and Council have requested a detailed schedule of the town's long-term debt, listing of debentures, description of nature and repayment terms. Also included are capital lease items and a loan for the library, which is held Vision Credit Union. So the attached schedule, just to emphasize, the balances are unaudited, and this is as of December 31, 2023. So again, there wasn't a specific question associated with the request, just that the information be provided. So at this time, I'll open up for any questions.
Good to see, and interesting change in the interest rates over time, I guess, especially the last year or so. But
Yeah, I mean, based on the 2022 audited financial statements, the town's average blended interest rate was 3.03%, which is quite low. Most of the town's debt was incurred when interest rates were significantly lower than they are today.
yeah, it's good to see the Baytex was at 3.2%, so. And the other thing with this sort of thing, if the town suddenly had a windfall and said, well, I'd like to pay off, I don't know, some of this debt, it kind of doesn't really work so nicely, does it?
I mean, we have some flexibility with some of the items near the bottom of the list, some of the capital equipment that we purchased on lease. Those are 10-year leases, but they're open-ended, so we could choose to pay those off sooner. But the rest of the debentures are just on the payment schedule.
And kind of, it's my understanding that if you do say, well, I want to pay off one of these, say the Baytex debt, that you're really not much further ahead because they charge you some of the interest on the years ahead anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, that would usually be the case if
Like
the
a
interest
mortgage.
rate is in excess. Like right now, again, if you've got debt at less than inflation, that's good debt to have at
Yeah,
this point in time.
Great. Any other questions, councillors? Interesting list. Okay, would someone care to move this briefing note for information?
So moved.
Councillor Ford moves, all those in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
Is carried. Thank you, Mr. Mumford.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Mrs. Miller, RCMP 2024-2025 Community Policing Priorities.
Thank you, Worship. So as a request for decision outlines, this is the annual request that comes from the RCMP division looking for what council's top 3 priorities are for their work plan development for the next fiscal year for them, which is April 1st to March 31st of 2025. So as mentioned here, last year's priorities were downtown crime, including property crime, crime reduction, and community visibility. And then what they settled on overall, once they talked to all of our partners or all the communities that they serve, was organized crime, particularly drug trafficking, property break and enters, and police community relations. So police visibility, community engagement. And I think they would like to have a response again by mid-March if possible, to be able to put together and come up with their final plan.
Okay. So councillors, do you have any thoughts at this point in time on this 3 priorities for policing?
Safety in the downtown core would be the one area I would think should be a priority.
I'd like to see some visibility in all areas of our community. And with that, some looking at traffic perhaps, especially on some straight, longer streets, shall we say. Anybody else?
Yes, your worship.
Yeah.
my top three priorities are the same, as the ones that, CAO Miller just read off from last year. I think we still have a lot of work to do on those three priorities.
Anybody else? Councilor Carr?
I agree with Councillor Ford on that. I do like the idea of speed because I have quite a number of vehicles speeding past my house on River Road, but we had some very positive feedback from the members walking through the mall and stopping in at businesses downtown. So I think that was having a pretty good impact, a pretty positive impact. So I'm happy with the three we had, but if we could somehow do the speed control with those digital signs or however they do it would be good as well.
So I'm gonna go back and speak to the one I brought up. The visibility thing, I think it can lend itself to some traffic enforcement and just the feeling of community safety, that knowing that the police are around in their areas, be it Shasberry Estates or wherever. So that visibility, not only downtown, but other areas, residential as well as commercial, I guess, I would say. Okay, so anybody else want to chime in? So we've got downtown crime reduction, community visibility, and I'm putting a dash, all areas of the community, including some traffic reinforcement or enforcement there.
Your
Does that
worship.
work for people? Councilor Ford?
Yes, could CEO Miller repeat the three top priorities from last year again, please?
Sure. From last year was downtown crime, includes property crime, crime reduction, and community visibility.
Yeah, I still like those three.
And I'm wanting community visibility to be all areas of the community, including some traffic.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Any other comments? Okay, so if we recommend to the Peace River RCMP detachment that council's community policing priorities for 2024-25 are downtown crime, including property crime, crime reduction, community visibility in all areas of town, and including traffic enforcement. And that'll go to their regional discussions, and they'll come out with 3 regional priorities. So would someone like to move that? Sorry?
If I were to just move that list, is that enough or?
Yeah,
I don't
think
have
so.
that memorized.
Ms.
Does that work for-
Parsons, do you have, you're okay? Okay, Ms. Parsons has the list. Everybody understands the motion? All those in favor of the motion?
In favor.
In favor.
It is carried. Thank you. Next step, we have contract policing assessment. Yeah, contract policing assessment, additional feedback opportunity with Ms. Miller. Your worship.
So over the past, over this, there was some public engagement on contract policing and assessment of the contract policing in advance of the new contract discussions beginning. I believe this contract ends in 2032. So I suspect they're starting to develop their discussions for renewing that contract. And part of that process is they held some public engagement and asked for feedback on the current contract services, and So you can see the attached, there's some questions there. Before it actually goes any further, they've actually asked if we would review the preliminary findings and if council had anything further that they would like to add by way of comment to these. If you could decide on that and let me know, so then we could provide additional feedback prior to February 16th to ensure that it goes into their completed report.
So, in other words, look at the dear colleagues, section
Yes.
and, say if we agree or want something changed there. So councillors, February 16th is fast approaching. Do we have any changes we'd like to see in that list? The second last bullet, some jurisdictions are considering the creation of independent policing services to better meet community priorities and objectives. Do we want to say anything about that or just let it be? I don't know.
That's what some are doing. We can't really deny that they're doing that. We're not doing that, but some are. What I understand, all the ones that are at 90% anyway. 90% of the RCM costs, like, so for example, Grand Prairie would be one that's paying 90% of RCMP costs, so for them to, and they are very strong considering it moving that direction. And one of the reasons why we're at 70.
Yep, so sounds like council would be willing to just accept the list and that would be our feedback. Does that help? Ms. Parsons?
The recommended motion would just be to accept for information. We could just.
Okay. So would someone care to put forth that motion if there's no further discussion?
Sure, I'll move the council accept the contract policing assessment report update for information.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of that motion?
In
Aye.
favor.
In favor.
Okay, it is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we will quickly go through some of the rest here and we'll have a break before closed session. So reports, we've got the CAO fourth quarter report, council motion tracker. Quite a lengthy list, Mrs. Miller. Lots of green, so that was good.
Green is very good.
Okay, anybody have any questions on that chart? Lots of work there. Okay, then we have council event attendance report with myself and councilors Boychuk and Scammahorn. Okay, would someone move acceptance of reports 9-1 and 9-2 for information?
So moved.
Councilor Ford so moves. All those in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
In favor.
It is carried. Information items, we have council communication package of February 2nd. Anything that somebody wanted to bring up there? Then the second item, Alberta Air Tours, Peace River Region or Peace River Airport. This is the one that Mr. Stewart was referring to as being about 40 airplanes apparently or so. And it's at the end of August, August 31. And it will be at the airport. Then we have the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting minutes of February 5th. And would someone care to move the information items 10-1 through 10-3 for information? Councillor Carr for information?
Yeah, I can do that.
He so moves. All those in favor?
I,
In favor.
In favor.
Carried. Section 10 or 11, notice the motion. Do we have the notice the motion?
I do, your worship. So I have a notice of motion. Councillor Ford moves to direct administration to look into leasing the land from the landowner, the provincial government and or the federal government from the town of Peace River property lines to the Peace River water's edge on both sides of the river within the town of Peace River town limits.
Okay, so that's been read into the minutes, and so that will come up at another meeting for a vote and carry on. Comments from the public? We have any? Key communication items from this meeting?
changes to the business grant.
Just business grant.
As well as the 3 priorities for the RCMP.
Anything else? Okay, that's it then. Okay, somebody, let's take a, what do we need? 5-minute break, 6:56. We'll be back here and we'll go into closed session for those items.